So here we are, all sitting around waiting with bated breath for the release of High Isle, the Elder Scrolls Online's 2022 year-long story. And while some of us have been content with playing the game as it is now while we wait, the more feverish ESO nerds have been busy scouring the internet for any nuggets of information they can get their hands on to sate their savage hunger for new content. And would you look at that, a particularly moist little info nugget, courtesy of the ESO combat team. So I'm going to take you through everything Gilliam shared with us here in this post, but before I get started, I just want to make sure everyone's seen my High Isle announcement breakdown video, right?
I haven't seen it yet.
Hurry up, Kevin. Everyone's waiting. It's right there in the description. Alright, now that we're all up to speed, let's take a look at all the combat changes we know about so far in patch 33. So the post starts out saying they've been relatively happy with how the game's been evolving combat-wise, specifically in regards to character expression and freedom of build choices. This statement pretty much sets the tone for the entire info dump, making it clear where the combat team's primary focus has been. And I have to say, it all sounds like a pretty good direction for the game to evolve in. Tamriel is all about freedom of choice after all, and the combat system shouldn't be any different. Now, there are three major changes outlined here, so I'm going to break them down one by one. The first is in relation to how an ability's power scales in regard to your stats. The second change involves a sort of pseudo-merging of buffs, and lastly, some abilities are having a functionality cleanup. The first point is the big one, and it sure has sent the brains of theory crafters across the internet into hyperdrive. As of patch 33, an ability's power will scale off your highest offensive stat, those being max stamina and weapon damage, or max magicka and spell damage. Gilliam elaborates by saying, any ability that used to scale exclusively with spell damage and max magicka will now dynamically scale with weapon damage and max stamina, and vice versa. This is going to have massive implications, not just for buildcraft, but skill identity as well, though the concept does seem to have caused a little confusion. I've already seen people getting a bit perplexed about the magicka and stamina pools themselves, so let me explain. While the abilities will scale off your highest offensive stat, they'll still use their respective resource pool. This means that magicka builds will now have more use for their stamina pool than just sprinting and sneaking, and stamina users will, well, their magicka pools won't just be for decoration anymore. The unfortunate news is that a viable, true hybrid split stat build still seems to be quite a ways off. These changes don't necessarily lend themselves to split builds because while they do have an equal amount of stamina and magicka to play around with, splitting attribute points between the two just means that neither would be as strong had they all just been dumped into one. On the other hand, this change is going to allow you to add abilities that use your secondary resource pool to your rotation. Though keep in mind that the balance here is going to come naturally from the fact that your secondary resource pool is going to be significantly smaller than your primary. So I wouldn't pick your spammable from your secondary pool. I mean, what could be more embarrassing than landing up with dry clicks a few seconds into the fight, am I right? Rather, you'll be wanting to use your secondary pool for buffs and utility spells and maybe dots and self-heals. In other words, things that are either fairly situational or that last long enough to regenerate resources back naturally. Now, moving on, the second big change that Gilliam announced is that abilities that give major savagery or major prophecy will now give both. The same applies with major brutality and sorcery. This change is being made to go hand in hand with the new dynamic stat scaling. Additionally, something that isn't stated in the post but was later noted on the PTS is that potions, racial passives, and Mundus stones will still only give one or the other. Okay, so some interesting changes, and yeah, I see their vision, but it seems like they have plans for the system that extend beyond update 33. Gilliam writes, in the long term, we plan on simply merging these bonuses, so there are fewer names and effects that you need to worry about, but there's still a lot of behind-the-scenes work that will result from that. As such, it may take quite some time before we're able to do that. Okay, I see you throwing the D word around all willy-nilly in my comment section. Dumbing down. Look, frankly... Aw, Frank. I missed you. Frankly, I think that this is an attempt to neaten things up, not dumb them down, but look, if you ask real nice, we can have a whole separate video about that. Now, the final big announcement is that many abilities are having their functionality cleaned up, with Gilliam saying abilities that aren't used as often will be receiving reworks to make them feel more up to par with abilities of their like. A few examples given were Power Bash's new functionality of being treated as a bash attack, or Piercing Javelin's new functionality of living up to its name and piercing through block. What we're looking at here are changes that make these abilities not only more interesting, but also add some much needed flavor. Gilliam also mentioned less substantial changes like the morphs for Lotus Flower, which now give players the choice of gaining healing over time or a significantly longer uptime for less management. The post closed by saying, the goal here is to open the door to more build freedom and diversity. For some players, we know such changes will instill a sense of needing to spend time and effort changing your loadouts, but we believe the long-term benefits will be worth it. So there we have it. Yeah, I for one really look forward to these changes, and yes, I do see you folks throwing the D word around, and I see your concerns, but I really don't think there's anything to worry about. There's just less balls in the air for players to juggle, so you can focus on important things like actually reapplying your dots on time. I see you, Kevin.
Sorry.
While I really love the changes announced in this post, I feel like in some ways they don't go far enough. I mean, hear me out. What if heavy attacks regenerated your highest resource pool, or at least a resource pool of your choice? Hell, they could even make it part of the weapon, like this bastard Mace of Fitness regenerates stamina, while this Holy Axe of the Horker regenerates magicka. I know, it would be a massive rework, but I've been turning this over in my head for a while, and I reckon it would go hand in hand with the changes announced in this post. But anyway, there you have it. Any thoughts you want to share about the changes? Excited? Disappointed? Is this too radical a change? Is it not enough change? You got the D word locked and loaded? Let me know in the comments. I personally think these tweaks are going in the right direction and kinda hope it signals a change in overall design philosophy. I mean, more options are always better in MMOs, and more to the point, while there will always be a meta, I think these tweaks at least give us more tools to play around with. So while the meta builds are inevitable, the more creative types can make ridiculous builds that defy logic. And that's it. Check out our other ESO content over here and smash that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll check you all in the next one.